All right, so we're going to talk about our modern attack packages, and this is a module update from our driver operator training. So our objectives for this, we're going to talk about our proper pump discharge pressure for our attack lines at the fire department. We're going to discuss our different attack lines and their purpose, and we're going to look at the WCFD pump chart. So a traditional line is an 1.75 inch line, and when we think of that, we think it's true. Well, there is a hose out there called True ID, which is 1.75 inches exact, and that's often paired with a 7/8 smooth bore or with a combination line. These were the hoses that we used to have on the fire department, but we no longer carry these because we made a major update. With a 7/8 smooth bore and a true 1.75 inch line, you get 160 gallons per minute of flow. The NFPA mandates that a fire suppression line should have 150 gallons per minute. So the 1.75 and a 7/8 smooth bore is a very good line. It's an amazing line. It's highly effective, but it's really good where construction and occupancy are very predictable. And what we mean by that is like a Reading, a Lockland, a Harrison, a place that's kind of built out and landlocked. There's not going to be a whole lot of new construction in those types of communities. The houses are pretty predictable as far as their size. They're anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. Their buildings are older construction. Many are balloon frame. And the 7/8 smoothbore works great for those. However, if you compare that line to the Westchester Fire Department, our construction is varied. It's all over the place. We have some of those types of homes and some of those types of constructed buildings where, it's 1,000 or 1,500 square feet. But we also have homes that are 2,500 square feet, 3,500 square feet, 5,000 square feet, and so on from there. We have mid rise and high rise. We have multiple large apartment buildings of new construction. And because our construction varies so much between, high-rise construction, our large warehouses, just so much stuff that we have, we felt as the fire department that 160 gallons per minute flow was not suitable for our community. At the end of the day, all firefighting is local. So because of that, we went to our 1.75 inch attack line is actually 1.88 inches. So we call it an 1.75 inch. We'll say stretch the 1.75 inch. Just know that the inside diameter is bigger. It's 1.88 inches. So that little extra bit allows us to flow more water. So we pair this to a 15/16 smooth bore. And when you do an attack package update, as we did, you cannot throw any nozzle on any hose. It doesn't work that way. And that's because the velocity that the water exits the hose line will cause what's called nozzle whip. That hose line will whip around. It becomes hard to control. And that's simply because people don't understand that you have to pair these things. It's kind of like shooting in the sense of you cannot put any type of ammunition in any type of gun. If you try to load a 357 with a 9mm round, it's not going to work. Similarly with hose lines and attack packages and how this works, it is not the same as slapping a garden hose nozzle onto any old hose line. These things have to be paired exact because that's how it's meant for optimal performance. Therefore, we pair ours to a 15/16 smoothbore, and that's because of the Freeman ratio. And the Freeman ratio basically says that half the diameter surface is the maximum you can go. So when you divide this all out, it comes out to be 15/16. So let's put that into practice, right? So engine 74 comes on scene of a house fire. They got smoke showing on the Charlie side. There's a reported kitchen fire. So the lieutenant on engine 74 says they want to stretch the white line. The white line is our smoothbore line. So they go to the Alpha side front door, and you as the engine operator have to figure out, well, what's the pump discharge pressure for that one cross lay coming off? Well, if you look at our pump chart, the 15/16 smoothbore, the white line, again, is a 15/16 orifice size. It has a 50 psi nozzle pressure, and it flows 185 gallons per minute. If you just march that pump chart across at 200 feet, we're going to pump that at 100 psi. So that's how this pump chart reads, is if you just march across at 200 feet, we're going to pump that at 100 psi. So we also want to say that at that 200-foot mark with the 100 psi, we're going to plus or minus that 5 by 5. And the reason for that is the piping of your apparatus. There's friction loss in the hose, and we understand that. There's also friction loss within the pump. There's also friction loss within the piping underneath the truck. So we're going to plus or minus that 5 psi, and that's a comfort factor. So the officer might, have a really good crew that is really good with hose line management. We're going to bump that to like 105. If they have a more inexperienced crew, we might back that down to 95 psi. So there's a realism side, and then there's a practicality side as well. So we're going to plus or minus that by 5 psi. Again, the downside with the white line and the smoothbore line and any low flow attack package that we have is the presence of kinks. That's why we advocate for the split stretch. That's why we have to make sure that our hose lines are stretched appropriately prior to making entry, or else you're not going to have our targeted 185 GPM flow. So let's look at our red line. So the red line is the combination line. It's attached with an Elkhart low flow nozzle. So even though it's a combination nozzle, it only flows at 50 psi. So it flows at the same nozzle pressure as a smoothbore. Traditional teaching would say that that's a 100 psi tip. It is not. It is a 50 psi combination nozzle, which gives us nearly the same pump discharge pressure. So from an operator standpoint, it's nearly identical to what you just had. So we'll say that engine 71 responds to a vehicle fire on the interstate, and then because of the placement, they opt to stretch the red pre-connect for a passenger vehicle fire. Again, if we look at our pump chart, we're going to go to the combination nozzle, which is the red line. It's an automatic fog. It has 50 psi nozzle pressure, and we're going to march that across. And at 200 feet, we're going to pump that at 95 psi. So it's 95 psi for 200 feet. If we're doing the bumper line, we're going to bump that down by 20 psi. So it's about 75 psi for the front bumper line. We also have an apartment load. It's the same exact 1.88-inch line for the apartment load, and there's only 100 feet of FD&Y line on the apartment load. It's attached to a reducer, and it's fed by 2.5, which gives it variable size. So you could have 50 feet of 2.5, 100 feet of 2.5, 200, 250. It just depends on how far and where you want to stretch that at. So the apartment load is our most complex load you have to pump because of the variable size. We have to know how much 2.5 is coming off. So as an example, engine 72 has a working fire on the third floor of a 3-story multiple family dwelling. They have fire showing from the Charlie side balcony that's extending to the attic, and the crew elects to deploy the apartment load, which is supplied by 200 feet of 2.5-inch line, which effectively makes this a 300-foot line. What is their pump discharge pressure? Well, if you look at our pump chart, we don't have anything for the apartment load. We do know that there's a 15/16 smoothbore, but it doesn't really add to the apartment load, so we have to do some different math. We know we have to have 50 psi for the nozzle, and the coefficient for friction loss for FD&Y hose is 25.5 pounds for every 100 feet. Fortunately, the apartment load is exactly 100 feet, so 25.5. For every 100 feet of 2.5-inch line on our current hoses, it's 7 pounds. 10 psi for the reducer, and then 5 psi for anything above the first floor elevation. So we got to calculate that all out. And that's the most complex part, is just remembering these calculations. So 50 for the nozzle, 25 for the friction loss, 7 for the first 100 feet of 2.5, 7 for the second 100 feet of the 2.5, 10 psi for elevation to the third floor, and 10 for the appliance. So if we do 50 plus 25 plus 7, 7, 10, and 10, we end up with 109 psi. We're actually going to just go to 110 and then plus or minus 5 psi from there. So what about our high-rise bundles? Well, remember, we have 2-inch lines with 2.5-inch couplings. This is a variable length as well, because we can stretch all of our bundles up and connect them all together. We might go 150 feet, 250 feet. It just depends on where we're at in the stairwell and where the target occupancy is. So engine 71 goes to the 5th floor of a 5-story hotel for a fire. They stretch the high-rise bundles and connect on the floor below. They put 150 feet of 2-inch line in service. So what do we do at the standpipe outlet? Because remember, as a pump operator for a high-rise, you're going to be on the 4th floor at the standpipe outlet. So again, our pump chart doesn't really relay that, so we have to figure out what our coefficients are for this. Fortunately, it's 18 pounds of friction loss per 100 feet of 2-inch. So it's in between 1.75 and 2.5, which makes sense. It's 18 pounds. We still have a smooth bore attached, so it's 50 psi at the nozzle. So if we add 18 for the 100 feet of 2-inch, 9 psi for the friction loss of an additional bundle, so because it's 150 feet, so 18 plus 9 plus 50 gives us 77 psi. We round that out to 80 psi at the standpipe outlet. And finally, just some supplemental information that's on our pump charts. So for a sprinkler system, we want our pump discharge pressure to be 100 psi. And then we're going to add half psi per foot or 5 psi per floor. Our max engine pressure is going to be 250. And then our max discharge pressure from a 5-inch is 180 psi. So if we're supplying an FTC, we're going to start at 100, and then we can bump up from there. But we're going to start at 100 to boost the system, and then we can amp it more to like 150 if we need to. But typically, we're just going to start at 100. Thank you for this update. Have a great day.